Following podcast contains spoilers, adult language, and some scary, spooky podcasters who want to say Happy Halloween!
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. The dead are coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, an all Walking Dead universe podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
And this is podcast episode. Thanks. I'm glad you were right there with me. Podcast episode number 271, folks. This week we're going to be discussing episode 21 of Walking Dead's final season. Title of this episode is Outpost 22. And I just want to say, taking notes for this episode, I went back and forth so many times thinking this was episode 22 because it's called Outpost 22 and it's almost the same number, but it's not the same number. I'm not gonna lie, it bothered me a lot. It more than it probably should have, to be realistic. But it did bother me, AMC. I'm not gonna lie. So anyway, so this is Outpost 22, which is episode 21. Keep that in your brainstem. So quick thoughts on the episode. Steve, why don't you go first this week? What did you think of Outpost 22?
Okay, I'm happy to go first, and I just want to start by saying Happy Halloween to everybody. This is the greatest time of the year. It's the greatest holiday, and show me another day in the year where it is totally acceptable to go out and beg people for food.
I mean, you're not begging, you're just saying hi and they give it to you.
I know. It's great. It's great. And, it breaks all the rules of you never take candy from strangers. Not on this day.
Full-size candy for us? Hello. I don't care who you are.
We're going to circle back and hit those guys again. Yes. Yeah, so, I know. Anyway, okay, so as far as the episode, I was kind of underwhelmed, to be honest. It was fine. I didn't not like it. I just didn't think it was great. I didn't think it was as good as the last couple. But I don't think that's a bad thing. Again, there's only 3 left, and there's a lot of plot throwing upping they got to do here to get us to the end, right? Yes. And so that's kind of what this episode was, where we're kind of like, oh, okay, a lot of threads. Wait, they're all tied together now. Isn't that great? And off they went. So there was some good stuff in it. I think there was a little bit of action. There was some good gags in terms of the effects. There was some good acting there. A couple scenes between Maggie and Carol and Ezekiel Negan and so we'll get into all that, but again, overall, it was kind of just So, what'd you think?
Yeah, before we started recording, Steve and I were talking a little bit about how we felt about it, and I think it sort of encapsulates my feeling that a lot of episodes this season, it's almost like they're afraid to sort of blow their wad now, because they still have 3 episodes left. And there have been some episodes where they've been sort of building, but now it's like they've been building for all of these episodes, and they're like, when are you going to get to it already? There's tension, sure. There's some stakes, sure. There's some action, sure. But it's nothing that's making me go, oh my God, and like we talked about, the acting's great. The writing is good too, and some of the situations are good too. The action, the fighting, the ghouls are good. Do we introduce large major plot elements 4 episodes before we're finished for forever? I don't know. Maybe. Especially since we're all kind of expecting that final episode to have at least a good 10 to 15 minutes of if you read the comics books, you're expecting at least a little bit of jump forward. I mean, maybe not as much as in the comic books, but you got to at least, a little bit of fan service there. So I don't know. And I think part of the problem, like I said before we started recording, was I don't know what I expected out of this season, but it hasn't been this. And it doesn't mean the episodes are bad. They're good, but they're like season 6 episode, 12. That's it. Like it doesn't have the stakes of we're almost to a finale. We're almost to a series finale. I just don't know. It feels weird because it feels like we're complaining, but I think it's that we're expecting more and we're getting good, but not like stuff that's going to blow us away.
Right.
And this show has done that so many times before, and it just feels like they took their foot off the gas just a little bit. The car's still going fast, but they took their foot off the gas because they're sort of coasting just a little bit. So I don't know. I can't wait for them to, go full throttle again. We're ready for it. We're ready for it, Angela Kang. Give it to us.
They better hurry up because there ain't much left.
Yeah. Running out of episodes here.
Well, and again, who knows what next week's going to be because they've been very tight-lipped about it, but it certainly looks like it's going to be a lot of courtroom drama stuff.
Yes.
And so that doesn't exactly scream, Carol blowing up the termites kind of action. So,
right.
It's like, okay, guys, come on, let's step on the gas here, right?
Where are we going and when are we getting there? I'm not sure. But let's get into our details of the episode itself. And first off, let's start with our episode description, which is always your little speciality. So, sir, take it away.
All right. Well, this week's episode is being brought to you by AMC Original Programming. AMC proudly presents the next great zombie western, Daryl Dixon and the Look at the Flowers Kid. Norman Reedus is Daryl Dixon, and the Look at the Flowers Kid is Melissa McBride. Dog is Dog.
You think we can follow it without him seeing us?
We hang back far enough, we'll be fine.
Most of this is true, and all of it blazes with action.
There's a train.
We wait for it to come and then we see where it goes.
You've never met a pair like Daryl and Look at the Flowers.
Yeah, only because you wouldn't shut up.
Good.
Outlaws with a style and a class all their own.
It's up to you.
They even took Dog.
But that's all you're going to get, a chance.
An incredible pair of rugged adventurers, creating a living legend in a zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, but this isn't going to be easy.
Is it ever?
Coming soon, right after the Daryl and Paris show, but probably before the Rick and Michonne show.
You might survive.
Daryl Dixon and the Look at the Flowers Kid. Rated Z for zombie. AMC Original Programming. After The Walking Dead, yeah, we pretty much got nothing. So, can't wait to see that.
I mean, if you can't just end your series, you might as well just do 10 spin-offs. I mean, why not?
Why not? Just keep them all going. Yeah, I like that they're saying it's coming after the Daryl in Paris, but probably before the Rick and Michonne show. You're not really sure. It's just somewhere in there. So yeah. Anyway, I thought that was amusing. So
that's good.
All right, so the episode description in question is, again, it's episode 11.21. And it's titled Outpost 22. And the description is, separated from their children, Maggie, Gabriel, and Rosita track a military convoy to a mysterious destination. Ezekiel, Kelly, Negan, and Annie find themselves at a work site. Daryl and Carol follow a train that has taken Connie aboard. And that is your episode description.
Do you want to hear something funny about that episode description? We had it in time for the end of last week's episode, because I always try and get the description of next week's episode by the time we record. And a lot of times IMDb has the description because it comes out via, press release, yada, yada.
Right.
But Outpost 22 just had our survivors follow a convoy. That's it. But this description was actually erroneously attached to the next episode, Faith.
Oh.
And as soon as it said the thing about the convoy and the whatever, I'm like, this is the episode. And I'm like, okay, this is it. It was just very bizarre because if you go to IMDb, I was looking there today to get like little tidbits for today, and it's still that way. Episode, at least earlier today, episode 22 still says, at 21 for Outpost 22, still says, the survivors follow a convoy, and then this long description is attached to the Faith one. And I don't know, is that on purpose? Like, are they trying to like keep, are they trying to keep the description of what happens in the next episode, as away from the public as long as they can? That's a possibility. Or is it just a stupid mistake? That's also a possibility. But either way, I just thought it was funny.
Yeah. I think it could be a little bit of both.
Yeah, a little bit of both. I don't know. All right, so before we get into our points for the episode, let's discuss first the writer and director of episode 21.
All right. Well, let's see. Our writer is a gentleman named Jim Barnes, and we have talked about him in the past.
His name definitely sounded familiar.
And he wrote, he came on board, again, he is one of Angela Kang's people that she brought into the writer's room when she took over. And he started in season 10, so last season, and he wrote 4 episodes that season. He wrote Ghosts, he wrote Stalker, he wrote A Certain Doom, and then in the COVID bonus episodes, he wrote one more, which is we talked about last week, because Eric Mountain co-wrote that with him, and that's the Robert Patrick twin.
Oh, yeah, the Gabriel and Aaron episode.
Yeah. And then for season 11, he wrote the premiere, A Chiron Part 1 and Part 2 with Angela Kang. Then he wrote Warlords, which was another one of the Reaper episodes. He wrote The Rotten Core, which had to do with the Commonwealth. And then he wrote this episode, Outpost 22. So he has written 5 episodes of season 11. So fairly accomplished in recent Walking Dead seasons. And he wrote some good ones. So, I think he's a good choice for this last fourth or 1/4 of the shows that are left. So, and then our director is a gal named Tanya McCurian, and she has 2 Walking Dead credits, directing credits to her name. She has this episode, Outpost 22, and she also did The Lucky Ones, if you remember that episode from earlier. I believe that was also a Reaper episode. And then she also, unfortunately for all of us, she directed a Fear episode from season 6 that was entitled Damage from the Inside, and I believe that is the episode where wow, I'm blanking on everybody's names. Strand and my future Australian ex-wife. It's where they have the molasses factory and they have to clear out. There and I believe it's that one. So, but anyway, yeah. So it's like, who cares? It's a Fear episode, and it wasn't very good. But anyway, she directed that one too. So, and that is your writer and your director.
Some interesting information this final time. I watched the episode like 2.5 times. I'm really getting nervous about spoilers because they've been coming out sooner and sooner. I've already seen stuff, and I posted something in our notes to talk about it later too, but I literally sat down on the couch, opened up Twitter, which was a mistake. I have to be careful about keeping myself toggled in between my personal and the podcast Twitter, even though there's a little bit of overlap, but not really. I try to keep it separate for exactly that reason. And I opened it up, and there are people on there talking details for episode 22 already. And it was like first thing in the morning on Sunday because it's released on the app right away before they even show episode 21 on AMC. The next one is available on AMC Plus first thing on Sunday, which I know is a struggle for a lot of people. So I'm trying to watch the episodes a little bit earlier in the week. Typically, I would just let it, slide by most of the week, watch it like, Wednesday, Thursday, something like that, and then watch it again on like Saturday or Sunday. So I did that, except I watched it, I think last week. I think I watched it on Monday night, maybe after I was finished editing, because you and I both agree we don't want to watch the next episode until we finish recording. Mm-hmm. That's the thing, because I don't want what I see in the next episode, especially now, to color what I'm going to think or say about this week's episode. But anyway, so this past week I watched episode 21 very early in the week, earlier than normal, which was fine because then I didn't get spoiled by anything all week long. And then I did watch it last night while it was on live, but I was sort of half paying attention because I was helping my wife with a craft project. I was working on her work Halloween costume.
Of course.
Such a nice person.
Sure you were.
And then I watched it. I was afraid I didn't have enough details. So when I got home after work and I'm doing the final prep of our notes, I just put it on in the background so I can just be like, okay, one last time. But right in the beginning, you know how it has said on the closed captioning, and we had it confirmed that the narration, at least the first couple of times, it said Judith and then said the name.
Right.
It didn't say that this time.
I noticed that. But did you notice it was a different voice?
It is. You have to listen really closely because it's a young person.
It's the other kid. It's the kid who never says nothing.
It could be RJ, but they didn't say. It just says boy.
Yeah.
It doesn't identify who it is. So the thing is that in the comics, spoiler, the stories our survivors are being read years later by Carl's child, which is we're not gonna see Carl's children because that's not happening.
That would be weird.
That'd be very weird. So there's Carl, we go into the future and Carl is married and has children, and there's a book of the experiences that, his dad and the survivors had, trying to keep civilization together, yada, yada. And they're reading from this book, and there's a lot of like things being said that sound a lot like the things that Judith in this narration has been saying as well. So if we're starting with Judith, who maybe she writes this book, and we slowly transition the voice so that if it didn't say boy, I wouldn't have known. I would have known it sounded a little bit different, but I literally wrote down Judith narration because it sounded a little different, but I couldn't tell if it was her or not. But the closed captioning told me it wasn't. And I'm like, oh. And so are they slowly transitioning to the storytelling being done by someone else who will be in some flash forward? Like it starts out being Judith because maybe she writes the book, and then it slowly becomes this other person. And then maybe in the final episode, it'll say, blah, 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 and have the name in the closed captioning of who is reading this story, because we're going to actually see it on the screen. And it'll be like, whatever, Judith's son or something like that. Here's hoping. I don't know. I think that's possible. Or it could just be some scene that we get of the kids sitting around telling stories. It could be Judith, Gracie, RJ, Herschel, and other small children just telling stories about, our parents and how they became friends and they all worked together. And some of my parent isn't even the one I was born to, but they're my parent. And, there could be that kind of thing too. But I just think it's interesting that it's not Judith and that they're not naming who it is yet. So I'm curious what that's going to be. But anyway, so that's that. It's not Judith. It's someone named Boy, someone who is a boy. But I liked what they were saying in the piece, anyway. It was about, we've always been fighting. I can't remember a time when we haven't been fighting. But I also think we can find hope and we always find hope together. And it was really sort of centering on how our crew is always there for each other, and they're always have each other's backs no matter what. And then it goes from there, and it transitions right to the scene of Maggie and Gabriel and Rosita breaking out of that convoy truck and doing it so smart and so precise, and in a way that keeps all three of them safe, because they all have each other's back and they all would help each other no matter what the circumstances are, because they're family with each other. So I liked the open narration, and then it just sort of led into this very typical scene of our group getting away from something scary or something dangerous, and ultimately it's them sort of helping each other, like, and the coordination of like waking up Gabriel, shushing, don't make any noise, and Gabriel, waking up Rosita and doing the same, don't make any noise, and they understand and implicitly trust the person who woke them up, and they know. It's just, it was great because there wasn't a word said, and you could see the bond that those three had, that they were able to do that without any words or any, whatever, any gestures. They knew what the next thing had to be. It was jump out of the truck. So I just thought that was really cool. What did you think of like the narration or like that opening scene with Maggie and Gabriel Rosita?
It kind of explained, okay, we got to see, okay, it's not everybody in one truck or one bus or whatever, that they're all split up. And it just, I kind of laughed a little bit because I just thought back to that scene between Yumiko and Eugene when he was in jail, and she, is like, I'm sorry, but I have to prosecute you. Remember that scene from last week? And he keeps telling her to be like, we have to have faith in our compadres that they will find a way out. And it's just like, of course they're gonna find a way out. They're those people. And literally like 2 minutes after she wakes up, not only are they all out of the truck, all of those troopers are dead. Yes. The truck is wiped out. I mean, it was. I just laughed because I'm kind of like, yep, Eugene, you were dead on.
Absolutely. I mean, he knows our people pretty well. That's for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, I mean, again, I did like that. She kind of slowly, slaps Gabriel, and then when he starts to come around, she's immediately like, shut up. She's like, don't say nothing, and the same thing with Rosie, and then they all kind of, well, two of them slip out the back, and then Maggie the guy finally wakes up and throws her back into the truck, but anyway, I thought that was really cool, and that kind of led into one of my first notes, which is after the truck wipes out, because of course. The guy, starts shooting and they're struggling, and one of those rounds immediately hits the driver and headshots him, right?
Of course.
So then when it wipes out, and then she's the only one that's still alive, and she gets out and she goes and she tries to get the machine gun out of the cab, and I just love the makeup of the driver, who's almost like his face is like been impaled on the steering wheel, and it's just the windshield is smashed and everything, and the other guy went right through the windshield and is like hanging from a
he's
tree.
Hanging.
Yeah, and so my just thought was like, this is a public service message to everybody: wear your damn seatbelt.
Oh yeah, and if you're a soldier and you're transporting prisoners, it doesn't matter how well they're like locked up. This all is because the guy in the back fell asleep.
Yes, yeah, he was sleeping.
Yeah, he was asleep, and everything was able to happen because of that. And I did make note of it too. I hate that trope. Whenever there's a struggle inside a car or a truck with passengers, when there's a struggle with a gun, and if the gun goes off, it is of course going to shoot the driver without question.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's the law. It has to happen that way. If you don't do it that way, they're going to come and find you, and they're going to assess a fine because you did it wrong. Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry. Yeah, so that's a great scene. I did like they go from that convoy, they jump out, and then they go to the next convoy, which is the convoy that has Ezekiel, Kelly, Negan, and Annie. And that's really frightening because when they first get there, they take up, I mean, first of all, when Ezekiel first wakes up, I thought he was dreaming just for a hot second. And then I was like, okay, everything's, because he like wakes up with a gasp, and takes a deep breath. But, he pulls off the hood and they all kind of slowly start to do the same. But it's very foggy where they are. So it looks kind of otherworldly, like they're not. So for that first second when he pulls his head thing off, his head wrap, I was like, is he dreaming this? Or because it didn't look like there was someplace you couldn't see any of the surroundings. It looked very sort of fake and kind of dreamlike. But then that goes away really quick. And they figure out where they are, and they can sort of look around. They're passing information. They were in a second truck, and then Annie's like, I thought I heard a crash in the middle of the night. And, Negan's like, that sounds about right. Sounds like something.
He kept saying that fits.
Yeah, that fits. Yeah. Because that sounds like something Maggie would be able to accomplish somehow. And they're all sort of chatting, and then their new person in charge comes on. And he calls him, and he's like the warden. And the worst part is that he tells everybody, like, there's no names. I'm not going to tell you my name. Nobody has names here. And as soon as he said, I'm not going to tell you my name, I'm like, that's fine. We're only going to see you for max 3 episodes, and then you're dead, or your story's over.
So it really doesn't matter who you are.
It doesn't matter what your name is. I'm just going to call him General Hux, because he totally gives me General Hux vibes from the Star Wars movies because his his red hair and the way it is. So I was like, totally looks like Domhnall Gleeson. And so I'm just gonna call him Hux. That's my name. I'm putting it out there, people. Deal with it.
All right. I love it. Let's get some t-shirts.
Yeah. Yeah, but that was a really sort of kind of terrifying start to like I take that back. Not terrifying, but we're sort of like, here we are again with this, you're in trouble. These are the rules. We're gonna split you up even further. So he takes like half the people. Of course, he separates Annie and Negan. But thankfully, Negan and Kelly and Ezekiel stay together on the same crew. So they immediately split people up, and then they take them away. And then the rest of them stay, and they start working on the train tracks, fixing, repairing, and it's hard labor. They're not supposed to talk to each other, not supposed to do anything. There's, it seems like it's going to be like very downtrodden. Yeah, so it's interesting. It also hit me too, like when they were separating everyone and Annie gets up and she starts to leave, but of course Negan has to do the whole, I'll find you, we'll get out of here, the 3 of us, and says his little piece. And then the stormtrooper is like, let's go. But he calls it, they don't have names. He's like, let's go, exile. And that's what he was calling Annie. And I'm like, ugh, that's awful. So they're considered exiles based on, whatever Pamela wants to base it off of, I guess. I don't know.
They're undesirables.
Yeah, undesirables. How dare they? Yeah. So your thoughts on our second convoy, our folks at this hard labor camp?
It made sense. I mean, since you use Negan, it fits that they would separate Annie, because we all know Annie is dead woman walking.
Yes.
And so we know that Negan has the plot armor of the upcoming show. So
right.
But the rest of those folks on that bus do not.
Nope.
In terms of Ezekiel and Kelly. Yeah. So but I just it made sense to me that, okay, so they have to separate Annie, because that's Negan's thing now, is he's going to do whatever it takes to get back to her, right? To make sure that she and the baby are going to be okay, which, foolish man, because she is so dead, right? It's just like never going to happen. But that is going to force him to basically have to work with people that he's got, and that means he has to go and try to mend the fences with Ezekiel, right?
Yeah.
Who clearly is like the last person who wants, besides like maybe Maggie. Maggie might have a little bit more of a bone to pick with Negan than Ezekiel, but it's close.
It's funny, right? Because when go ahead. No, finish up.
No, go ahead. You can say.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I know we're sort of jumping to that scene a little bit, but the thing that really struck me about that is that I just never even thought about Ezekiel holding a grudge. They did a really good job. I don't think you have to go back and see. I can't think of them having any interaction since he was, taken prisoner and then, people, there's been no, because Ezekiel was at Kingdom, obviously, and then when Kingdom finally was in disrepair and it fell, and then obviously the Alpha stuff, and they were all attacked, and they end up at Hilltop and all of that. They never really matriculated through Alexandria, not until much later.
Yeah.
And I just when he had that scene, I was like, wow, man, it never dawned on me, like, he has a huge bone to pick with Negan, because he was a leader of a group that had to deal with his shit, and you think about the stuff and Carl was killed, and that was a terrible time for Ezekiel, and to have to deal with that. And they actually were doing all the right things. They had every reason to not go along with the Alexandrian people. They were living well. They were living in peace. They were able to produce for Negan, and things were okay. So much so that Ezekiel actually hid a lot of the Negan stuff from his people. He bore the brunt of a lot of that, him and a few of his soldiers. He kept them abreast of it, and they came and did the handoffs. But they kept it secret from their people because they wanted them to live in peace and not have to worry about those things. It was really important to him. And to have all of that broken by Negan. And then you have to remember, too, when they came upon that outpost that Gareth had, they were all mown down. Like, all of the only people who survived out of the Kingdom soldiers were Ezekiel and Jerry in that scene.
Yeah. Right.
And he was surrounded by all of his people. They were dead. They were on top of him. It was horrific. It was terrible. And you forget about those things. And in that moment, I was like, holy shit. Like, Ezekiel, like, I love the way he said it too. He says, I have avoided you for years. And I was like, he has avoided him. There hasn't been any contact. I couldn't think of a scene where they had any kind of words to each other or had anything to do with each other. And that if there's one scene in this whole episode that I think really was the catalyst for like the move forward to the next part of the action, this scene to me was probably the best scene of the whole episode, was those two together. And mostly because it was so surprising to me, and it made me think back to so much of the history of that. So I loved it. I thought it was wonderful. And I've always really, really loved Ezekiel. He's always been one of my favorites. And I know he's not, he doesn't have any plot armor. So I'm nervous for him. Yeah. And I've been nervous for him ever since, he's had his little, throat cancer issues, whatever.
But the only thing you can take solace in is that, like, even if he goes next week, there's only 2 episodes after that anyway. So, it's not like he had a lot longer to go. You know what I mean? So,
right. So,
but yeah, I really appreciated that finally someone brings up the, all those women that you forced to marry you.
Yes. Good for him.
Yeah.
It called him on his shit and made him, it was good because I think it spoke to, there's a lot in the fandom these days that are like, oh, Negan is redeemed. And it's like, no, he's never said he's sorry.
No.
And in that moment where he's like, you're going to have to stow that shit. And Ezekiel's like, that shit? Like, do you even know what you've done to people? Like the hurt and the whatever, and the way he goes through it and, burning someone's face off and doing, like, that's not normal stuff to do. And making women marry you, that's not normal to do. That's not part of the normal, like, when you're angry at someone, you send them to a hard labor camp. That makes more sense than you ironed someone's face off.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah.
Ezekiel was the voice of the audience there. That's for sure.
Oh yeah. Well, just somebody finally brings it up, because like you said, there's certainly a chunk of the fan base that is like, Negan's like totally rehabilitated and he's a good guy now, and it's like, he might have changed somewhat, but you can't erase what he did.
No, not at all. And and there's no excusing it, and he doesn't even excuse it. If he ever came forward and was like, I'm sorry that he did these things, I mean, he's been very adamant about,
the only thing he's sorry about is he didn't kill all of them when he had the chance.
Yeah, and he said that, he admitted, like, I should have, letting Rick get the upper hand was his fault. It was his downfall.
Yeah.
If pressed, I would bet he would even say that it was his affection for Carl that clouded his judgment, because he really has he does connect with children, sadly, but it, helped them out. It gave him a blind spot. It made him a little more permissive with Rick, and look what happened.
That's right.
So anyway, we went sort of like off on the side there, but that was easily my favorite episode. Let's talk that ghoul child.
Yes.
Which I thought was also a really, really nice piece. At first I was worried. I thought it was going to be kind of heavy-handed. I'm like, oh, of course Maggie runs into a ghoul that's a child. But I think they did a good job with it. I think they had it do what it needed to do for her, for like where she was emotionally and what it needed to, highlight for her. Because first she's like, she runs away. She can't she can't kill it, and she's like runs away from it. She's like, I can't do this, and leaves. But it still pursues her. It still catches up, and she's gotta confront it. So it was like a walking metaphor. So yeah, I thought the Ghoul Kid was great. What did you think?
Oh, I did too. I thought that it. The only thing about it that it kind of threw me when the first time I watched it was, and this is just because it's been so long since we've seen Herschel, I was like, wait, is that Herschel?
Yeah. Because,
the way she's reacting to it, and, it's on, and I'm like, okay. And then, she has the talk with Carol. And so that's what I'm like, oh, okay. So no, Herschel might be dead, but that was not his zombie form. That was just another kid, another little kid that was like, and then as I watched it the second time, it strikes me that kid was probably a little bit older than Herschel is.
Yeah.
Herschel's what, like 8, 9?
Around there. Yeah.
And then that kid struck me as like 11 or 12 maybe. But anyway, I thought it was great. I thought, the makeup that they did for it to give it that look was great. And the way that Lauren Cohen played it was, clearly, like you said, the metaphor of losing a child. And, this is like, once she became a mom, like her main job in the whole world is to protect that kid,
right?
And she didn't,
Yeah.
And then she has that great scene with Carol, which again is a wonderful choice because out of everybody that Maggie knows in the apocalypse, Carol's the one that can totally go, I know where you're coming from.
Yeah, I've lost some kids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I lost my child, that my actual flesh and blood, I mean,
Yeah.
so that was I really liked the scene out in the wilderness when, you're right, she picks up that rock,
Yeah.
and which is kind of funny because we were talking about the ghoul and Variant picking up the rock
Yes.
when it climbs
It was almost
up,
like the same kind of rock. It was the same
it
stuff.
was, yeah, and then here we get this, where she picks up the rock to use it, and she can't, she's like, I can't do it, and I was thinking about that, just thinking like, man, that would be, it's one thing to like, do like the their kind of mercy, like knife through the side of the head thing that they do all the time, or to shoot a kid from a distance. But to like actually like pick up a rock and like have to like bash their brains in, I don't know. That's a lot.
Yeah, that might give you a little bit of trouble and possibly a little PTSD.
Yes,
I think it would be like that for anybody.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
if God forbid you have a small child, that's going to hit you even harder.
But I mean, just imagine, and then imagine, what would happen if it was your kid.
Oh my God, yeah. You would never be able to do it.
And that's why I'm guessing, if the ZA were to happen, that's why a lot of people would die.
Because they'll end up being eaten by their child because
or their brothers or sisters, their mothers or fathers, just people that they know that they just can't possibly imagine. Well, this person, they're not really dead. They're just like, sleepy, and they're not going to eat me, and then you get bit, so. But yeah, I loved the ghoul. I thought it was a great effect, and I loved the way that Lauren Cohen played it. And then I loved the eventual scene that happens a little bit further down the road where she has that kind of heart to heart with Carol about, all the guilt that she clearly is feeling, and Carol kind of sets her straight and says, hey man, and it's not your fault, and we're gonna get him back and all that stuff. So yeah, I loved it. I thought it was great.
Yeah, the only other thought I had, I didn't quite put down, but when you were saying what her reaction was when she first saw the child, that you were like, you had a moment where like, well, is that Herschel? Just because the way she played it. And then when the second time when I watched it, I knew it wasn't Herschel because of having already seen it, but I found myself looking closely because I was like, well, it's not Herschel and we know that, but could she know this kid? Could it be a kid from Alexandria that they, was misbehaving and got shot and tossed out of the Conway vehicle or something, that's a possibility. And I was like, does she know this kid? Is it a kid from the hilltop or something? Like, is there something there? And then it's clear it's just the ghoul is put there as like a Herschel substitute for her to sort of work through how awful she feels that she couldn't hang on to him, etc. So, but yeah, I did the same thing. The first time through, I was like, is that Herschel? Okay, it's not Herschel. But then the second time, I was like, but is it someone? It could be someone. It's not. It's
got it. Well, and in the featurette that's on AMC Plus, Angela Kang, she kind of makes it clear that it's not someone that Maggie knows. It's just a child. And Angela Kang brings up, literally the first zombie we ever see in the entire show, which is the little girl with the bunny rabbit. That Rick runs into at that traffic jam or whatever where all those cars were. And Angela Kang just brings up this idea of, this is something we don't explore a lot, but there are a lot of kids that are walking around as ghouls, and how traumatic is that? And kind of the stuff we just said of like, how hard would it be to put down a ghoul that clearly is a threat, clearly could kill you, but they're like an 8-year-old girl, you know what I mean? It's like, oh my God, how do you do that? So,
it was. They were talking about it on Talking Dead, which I actually was able to watch the whole thing miraculously, and they did talk about that, and it made me think about, because they started listing, it's only been this one and this one and this one, and it's the girl from the beginning, the teddy bear girl, half her face is eaten off. She's great too. the detail on her.
Yeah.
She's still one of my favorites because her mouth is like half away, but she still has braces. It's great. So her. There's also the baby that Sam sees when he ends up getting like freaked out. Yeah. And that doesn't, we don't remember that one a lot, but I was like, oh yeah, that's right. Because it wasn't even so much that it was a child, but it was so obviously a very small child.
And then you have Sophia.
Yeah, and Sophia, obviously, yep.
And then you have the one half of the Look at the Flowers gang.
We did?
Well, because the crazy member of the Look at the Flowers gang killed the other girl.
Oh, and she did
turned.
Reanimate. Yeah. But yeah, that's true. Oh, and the kid in the prison, the one that had got the virus first.
That's the voice of Phineas from Phineas and Ferb, yeah.
Is it really? Oh my god, I love that kind of stuff. That's great. Yeah, he spread the virus. Phineas.
Phineas.
How dare you?
What are we going to do today, Ferb?
Yeah, and then this nameless, faceless kid. Well, he had a face. That's not fair.
True. That's true.
He still had an intact face. Imagine how weird that would be. Ugh, non-intact face. I did love the moment with the Gabriel and Rosita scene was just like, run of the mill, like, let's go. Do you have a plan? I don't have a plan. You have a plan? Blah, blah. Like, they're not a couple, but they are a couple, and they're just arguing. And I'm like, ugh, none of it was exciting. But that moment when they're like trying to decide what to do, and it's like, is that a train? Did you just hear a train? And then they're gone.
Yeah.
Like, that would cut through any argument. They're like, did you hear a train? And then it's funny because then later they're like, oh, Carol and Maggie, when they, miraculously find them, and they're hugging and whatever. And then the first thing is like, there's a train. Did you hear a train? We heard a train. And it was just like,
yes,
like almost like they were like, are we crazy?
Yeah. Well,
did you hear it too? Because, we we were given some drugs, because when they were tossed from when they jumped from the truck, they were still passed out in the ground. So I don't know if that was drugs or did they not get knocked out when they jumped out of the truck. Who knows? But they were still kind of like in slumberland when that Zed came along. So, could it be like, are we still a little fuzzy from the sleeping drugs they gave us? But we could have sworn we, heard a train for the first time in like, I don't know, over 10 years.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing you got to remember is that, any of these sort of mass transit things, whether they're planes or trains or automobiles, see what I did there?
I see what you did there.
They're just, thing, or like a big cruise ship or a large sailing ship or something. They just haven't been around. So, when you hear that noise that you instinctively go, oh yeah, that's a train. You're like, whoa, what? There are no trains, not anymore.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And that must be weird. I was going to say it must be weird too, because I mean, we have a freight train that runs probably like I'd say it's about 2 miles from my house.
Mm-hmm.
But you can hear it. And they don't have to even hit the boo boo, they don't even have to do the whistle or anything. You can hear it riding the tracks 2 miles from there. And it's, where there's not a lot of buildings between me and where those tracks are, because I'm out in the country. So imagine what it's like out there in like the wilderness. There's no buildings, not really. There's no other ambient noise, because there aren't like planes riding overhead. There's no, cars driving by. There's no tons of people or whatever. It'd be like you're in a cabin in the woods. It's that silent. And then all of a sudden you hear a train. Like that would be really off-putting and strange.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And it might make you think, am I hearing things? So I appreciate that was the first, like, it's surprise. And also, am I hearing things? You heard it, right? You heard the train? I heard the train.
I'm not flipping out. We're both flipping out.
Yeah. Okay. Can't be flipping out if we're both doing it at the same time, right? That's how that works.
Yeah.
I was going to say, too, like really briefly, I was living back east during 9/11, and I was living about 20 miles north of Logan Airport, which obviously one of the planes took off from, but all of our airports were shut down for, how long was it? About 2 weeks, 3 weeks after 9/11. There were no flights anywhere, and they very slowly started to open up for domestic flights. And I distinctly remember the very first time I heard a plane I literally was visiting with my mother, and we went to a place we like to have seafood on the beach in Revere, which is it's right along the coast. It's like 2 towns up from Boston, and the approach to Logan Airport is right over Revere Beach. And we were sitting on the seawall eating food, and this plane came in, and I swear to God, everybody on the beach stopped what they were doing and everybody stared and watched the plane. It was so alien. And you're so used to it, like you just hear the planes arrive, just like in Chicago, if you're right by O'Hare or whatever. And if you live close to an airport, listener, you're used to planes coming in overhead all the time. But then when it was gone for that period of time, and then it came back, it was such a bizarre noise. Because you're like, oh my God, and you're like, so in that moment that Rosita had that moment, I totally understood where she was coming from. Because like when you don't hear it, your brain gets used to not hearing it, and you know what the noise is. But then when it happens, and you're like, oh my God, it's just bizarre. Like I've been in that sort of situation where that noise comes about and you're not expecting it. So it was very bizarre and such a weird experience to have everybody all at once be like, oh my God, a plane. Haven't seen one in weeks. And it just, and it was a standard, like a nice big plane, tons of people, and it was just flying over the beach and fairly close because that approach is pretty low. And we're all like, wow, like kind of mesmerized by the whole thing, and a little scared too, because obviously you don't know, and everything was sort of like up in the air, and there's a lot of fear during that time. So it was just like, it was just a very bizarre feeling at the time. So, and then it was done, and then we went back to eating our fried clams. That's what I have to say about that.
All righty.
All right. Well, there you go.
Diana likes planes.
Yeah.
What's your opinion, listener?
And I like fried clams from Kelly's Roast Beef on the beach in Revere. Hopefully, if there's anyone from Boston who's listening or has been there, we'll be like, yes. So they do find out that Connie is being put on this train, and they find out through listening on the walkie-talkies, designation 2 is something special, and they don't know what it is. They're apparently breaking some kind of...
Designation 1 is alpha, and designation 2 is beta.
Right. Okay.
Because, the big reveal is that these guys are actually the CRM.
Oh, yeah. Or they're dropping people off to the CRM.
Right.
Yeah, because they're definitely like... Because they even said, like, what they were sending was a cargo shipment. Well, to where? You know what I mean? Like, they weren't supposed to... That's what they said. They're like, this is not for people. This is cargo shipment only.
Right.
So where are they sending cargo?
To Alexandria.
Yeah. No. But if they... there's got to be something different. And they even said that, the only thing that soldier knew that he'd heard through rumors is that they're taken far away and they're never seen again. And he said far away. But that first reaction that they hear over the walkie, and they're like, designate, I can't take a person that's against regulations. This is a cargo, blah, blah, blah. Oh, it came from the governor and da-da-da-da. And it's...
No, it came from very high up is what
Yeah, so this is... it's a designation 2, and you just have to... And they were like, oh, shit, was their reaction. So designation 2 can't be something good, because their reaction was like, it's either something that's really bad, or it signifies, like, I don't know, Connie has some kind of special importance. Who knows? I'm erring more on the side of it's bad, though.
Yeah. No. What I took from that was, if you're designation 2, you never come back. They never see you again. That was their reaction. It was sort of like, wow, okay, so this woman, whatever she did to get this designation 2, it's bad enough that she's being banished. She's going way out in the boonies somewhere super far away, some gulag somewhere. And once she gets there, she ain't never coming back. That was the takeaway that I got from that.
Yeah, definitely. So their whole modus operandi is they've got to get her They have to somehow try and save her, but they can't do it because these guys are going to radio ahead, and they're afraid that something bad will happen to their kids. So they're sort of stuck, and they don't know what to do. So they hatch up this plan, and I think it went pretty well. The whole try and take down the train kind of thing. I think it went well.
Yeah. No, I mean, clearly they were able to get all the soldiers, and we had the the recreated shot for shot scene of the speeder bike chase in Return of the Muppets or Return of the Jedi, whatever you want to call it. Through the forest between Daryl and the trooper, and so yeah, I mean it was they ended up everything worked out. Not so much for the engineer, but everything worked out for our people, in that they got the train, they got Connie, and they did it in secret.
And it could have worked out for the engineer. He just made a very rash decision on his own.
Yeah.
But he decided to end things all on his own terms.
Yeah. But, I think that was important for the story purposes, because if, his reaction is, I can't help you, because if they even suspect that I helped you, they're going to wipe out my family. The whole point of that is just to stress to the main characters that, your family is in deep trouble. And like you just said, how can they make moves against Pamela when she has, their children?
Yeah.
And can, clearly, if that guy's willing to kill himself.
Yeah.
Right. And remember, Carol's like, hey, we can injure you, not a lot, just enough to make it look like, you didn't have any choice. And he's just like, nope, not going to work, because they'll see through it. And then, he stabs himself in the neck, which I thought was dumb, but he does. It just reinforces to everybody there that it's like, yeah, you guys have to be really careful how you're doing this, because if you slip up and they find out, bad things are going to happen.
Yeah. And it's, the thing is too, is like, he didn't just kill himself. If he had, it would have been, because the standard suicide methods of shoot, gun in mouth, gun on side of head, or, throw yourself off a building. Who the hell knows? It's not often you see suicide by spike to throat.
Yeah.
That
and didn't even, he was kind of off to the side of the throat, right? It's like, yeah.
This is 3 episodes in a row of someone dying with like the bloody, gurgly throat noises.
I know.
I mean, is this a theme?
Maybe Angela Kang has some, nightmare of throat trauma.
Maybe like your finger issues. Maybe she has throat trauma issues.
Although, if you think about it now, we've had 2 episodes in a row where a character has been killed by getting, a pointy object rammed through their neck. So that's something.
Yes. So maybe that doesn't bode well for one of our people in the future, Oh, geez. So, all right. So, yeah, we talked about that. Dude stabbed himself in the neck. They do find out in the ending, we have this great sort of like 2 scenes sort of running side by side. We've got Rosita talking on the walkie. They get the radio, the main radio from the cab of the train, magically make it work, but whatever. Don't think about details. So Rosita's talking on the radio to try and get through to someone at this Outpost 22 to find out more. And in the meantime, they have rounded up all of our people that are at that work labor camp, the Negan, Ezekiel, Kelly group, and all of those folks. They're done working for the day, and they're like, okay, everybody, let's go. And they're like, okay. And they put them on the bus, and they take them away again. Clearly, they're not going to tell them what they're taking them because they're exiles. But while they are driving up to whatever location it is that they're taking them, there's also this narration going on behind it and underneath the scene, and it's Rosita talking to this gal. And she's like, I got separated. She's basically, her cover is that she was like, I was with the group at the train, and we got overrun, and I'm hiding out in the woods, and I'm trying not to get found by one of them. but I'm lost. I don't know where to go. And then, then they go through this whole explanation of, oh, well, get your compass and go this way. And then when you get to the end of that road, that's this road. And then take a left and you follow that. And you're going to follow along here. And when you get to the tracks and da-da-da. And then when you get there, there's going to be friendly faces. And it's a town. It's like a settlement with walls built up around it. And then they show our people coming up in the truck. And then there's a little bit of unnecessary exposition there because we kind of figure it out when we see it. But basically, the girl on the walkie is like, yeah, and the people that they're bringing in there tonight, I guess they used to live there. It used to be called Alexandria. And then you see like Negan and Kelly and Ezekiel react to the fact they know right where they are. It almost felt to me like as they were doing the thing, and tell me if you felt this way too, when they were doing the thing with, the gal doing, take a left here and then take a right there, and you're going to go along down this road. It looked like Negan knew where they were before they even got up to the gate. He was like looking out the window and he kind of recognized where they were. That's what it felt like to me. How about you?
No, I didn't really get that sense.
Okay.
I kind of, the Negan, the kind of looking out the window, I thought Negan was just trying to formulate whatever plan he's going to do.
That's possible too. Yeah.
But, obviously once they get up to the gate and it says Alexandria right on it, they're like, oh, we're back at Alexandria, so.
Yeah.
But it's totally possible, right? Certainly, he knew that, that area around Alexandria because they were, as the saviors, they were there. So it could have been.
Yeah, he could have known those back roads and been like, oh, I know this road or I know that road. And then they're like, oh, this is the way to Alexandria. Why are we going to, it's just a bizarre, it looked to me like there was some recognition, and maybe I was just reading into it. But one interesting little factoid we found out is the voice that Rosita was talking to was a guest star, was Yvette Nicole Brown, who was, of course, always on the Talking Dead shows. She's a huge super fan, so it's really sweet that they were able to get a little role for her in the final season. So I thought that was really, really sweet of them. So
yeah, I thought
she
so
did,
too.
and it's not her fault. She didn't write her character to be super, super exposition heavy. Oh. They did that.
Yeah, she seemed way too chatty.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Just and I know for a fact that one of the guards will doze off 3 minutes past 11. It's just like, oh, come on. She was way. That was one of my nits that I had in this episode.
Yeah, I saw that.
That it was just kind of like, oh my God, please, somebody calls up and you have no idea if they are who they say they are, and you're just gonna blab like that. It's like you guys have no protocols. There are no. What's the password for today? Or you know what I mean?
Yeah, and also that's a lot of jibber jabber. You know what I mean? In any time when I've been in a professional setting using walkie-talkies, you keep it to the details at hand, and she started to sort of go off on something else, and I was actually expecting to have someone come in and go, keep it down, or keep the channel clear, keep the channel open, or something like that,
Cut the chatter, Red 2. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's just, you're right. And I agree. These are like military conversations, so it's not the time to be like, well, let me tell you what's going on.
You get a cup of coffee, we can sit down and chat, or, it was a little much. So, it looks like I hit all my points, but I know that you've got a couple of your nits in there that you wanted to pick. So let's talk about those.
And it's kind of funny. We were talking about it before we started that, we kind of made the observation that, you right away, and when this episode starts, you have Rosie and Gabe are separate. You have, Maggie is separate, and then you have Carol and Daryl. And we were just talking about if this was the Terminus season, those people wouldn't see each other until the last episode of the season, right?
Of
They'd
course
just all be wandering around, never getting close to each other or whatever. And yet, because there's only 3 left, all 3 of those groups found each other, pretty easily if you think about it, right?
Yeah.
Maggie takes out the one stormtrooper on the motorcycle, she stabs him under the armpit, and then that's when she puts down the kid ghoul, because the kid ghoul, of course, was following her. And then immediately, who drives up but Carol and Daryl? It's like, wow, okay, that's great. So then they go to wherever they went. That there was a bunch of buildings, and that's where the stormtrooper guy, had the scene with Gabriel, and they had the whole "Will you pray with me?" and all that stuff. But while they're there, before that happens, who shows up there too? It's Gabriel and Rosie. It's just, again, it's very, very convenient. I felt.
I get the thing, like, I thought about that because you had the note in there, and I thought about it. I was like, can you explain it away by all of the places where they did happen upon each other? They were near the tracks. Mm-hmm. Like, Maggie was right next to the tracks when Daryl and Carol came upon them, and they were trying to sort of follow the train, follow where they were going. So, okay. And then when they were waiting by those buildings, they were by the switch, and they were waiting for the train to come. But it still felt weird, like how would Rosie and Gabriel get there so quickly, because they didn't have a vehicle.
Right, they were just walking.
They were just walking. So that was the part that really felt weird to me, that they just out of nowhere are like, oh my God, hi guys.
Yeah. Wow. Small world. Yeah. So
and it's a little easier to follow the sound of a train when you have the vehicle. And now, of course, Daryl and Carol, they had eyes on the train, so they sort of knew the direction to head in, generally speaking. Mm-hmm. But if you've ever been like out in the middle of the woods and there's noise, it's really hard to pinpoint what direction it came from.
Oh, yeah.
So how Rosita and Gabriel were able to pick the right direction and like move quickly and get there, you know what I mean? That was the part of it that felt like you couldn't really explain that away.
Yeah. Again, it was very, very convenient writing, but again, 3 episodes left. What do you want?
Exactly.
They don't have
got to
the
figure
luxury.
It out somehow.
Yeah, they don't have time to waste having these groups all separate, because clearly they all got to come together. They got to defeat Pamela Milton and create that new leadership in the Commonwealth, and then go from there. So yeah. The only other note that I had was I thought was a great line where the train comes up and they stop, and the one trooper gets out, and he's obviously going to try and flip that big metal switch that will switch the tracks so they can go from one track to the other. And of course, as you said, our heroes have sabotaged the switch so it doesn't work, so it's going to stop the train, and then they're going to make their move on it, which they do. And of course, while that's going on and the guy he's struggling with it and so on, there's a guy that's on one of the flatbeds with like the motorcycles or the Jeeps tied onto him, and he radios to the guy who's up front with the switch, and he's like, how hard can it be? That's what he says. And so then after a while, that the guy is up front is like, well, why don't you come up here? And so that guy does. And then he starts struggling with the switch. And then the first guy who was there already, he looks at him and he's like, how hard can it be?
Yeah.
And I thought that was kind of funny, because that was like a real moment, because that's what I would have done if I was that dude.
Yeah, I'm sorry, isn't this really easy?
Right, yeah, it's just like, you're going to give me crap about this? Well, guess what? Here comes some crap,
Yeah, no kidding.
So I like that little moment. I thought that was kind of fun. Just even though both of those guys, I assume, horribly, horribly died, moments later, it was still fun.
Yes, they certainly did. They died, but they gave us some comedy before they left.
They did. So
it was very nice of them to do that. And anything else that you think we should discuss before we take our little break?
No, I don't think so. Again, like I said, it was a good episode. It just there weren't a lot of great beats to it. There were a couple, but and I think again, Variant was so good.
Yeah.
That we both really, really liked that episode, and we really, really, really liked the episode before it, in that I think we were kind of like, wow, if they're all like this, it's going to be great. And then this one wasn't quite as good. It was good. It just wasn't quite to that level, I felt. So.
And it's tough because they're in these situations which I think ordinarily would have really, really tough stakes, but you take Gabriel and Rosita and you have them off by themselves and you're like, okay, something bad could happen to them because, it could.
Right.
But as soon as you put Carol and Daryl and Negan, Carol and Daryl and Maggie together, no one is getting hurt because they are all fine. And
well, Carol maybe.
Maybe they might change that. But in that Negan group too, like, Ezekiel, nervous, Kelly, nervous, Negan, he's fine. So like, this is the part about knowing about the plot armor that makes it awful. Think of how tense these scenes would be and how scary it would be, especially like the work. I think the hard labor camp would be really scary because you'd be like, he's separated from his wife. Negan could go down because he's going to fight because he wants to get back to Annie. Something bad's going to happen to Negan here. This is his end, but we know it's not. So it's right. That's what sucks about us getting all this pre-information. There's no stakes to Maggie being in that car accident. We knew when that truck got in that accident, she was fine, right? Or she'd get like a Hollywood injury. So it's fine. So frustrating. But still, again, not a bad episode, a good episode. Part of the reason why Variant was so high stakes is all of those people could be on the chopping block.
Right.
So they were in true danger that whole episode, and that's what made it so great. I loved it. Variant was great. Such a great episode.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. All right. Anything else to discuss, or we're gonna take our little breaky break?
I think we're ready for breaky break.
We're ready for breaky break. All right, you heard that, folks. We're ready for breaky break. That's our new way of calling it that. So we're gonna go ahead and take that quick breaky break. When we come back, we're gonna discuss our listener feedback that we got and what's coming up on the podcast.
So stick around. We'll be right back.
Hey there, Internet. Do you like scary movies? What about going way off the rails while discussing your favorites, like Nightmare on Elm Street?
Can you all hear me?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you look
Can you
fine.
see me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you okay, Summer?
Tell us what you're seeing.
Friday the 13th. She's like, you're driving this whole thing, so it's like you're either gonna steer us to safety or you're gonna careen us all up to our death.
Either way, I'm fine with it.
I can see Summer doing a barrel roll out of a car now.
I know. Down a cliff, down some fields.
Halloween.
Exactly. Tom. And that mustache and that butt.
Oh my God.
And more. Trust me when I say that there's no movie that we can't derail right off the cliff. So come check out the Dolls of Horror podcast with your hosts, Girl on Gore Jamie and Summer of Fear. And me, producer Jesse, as we tackle all the horror movies, both new and old, and hopefully give you a laugh or two along the way. The Dolls of Horror is available on all podcast streaming services, including Apple and Spotify. Visit thedollsofhorror.com for more information.
The following is an emergency action message. Civil authorities have identified a biological threat that they deem credible. This threat could potentially affect the entire continental United States.
The dead are returning to life and attacking the living.
911, what's your emergency?
There's a man off bed and he's attacking another man. Looks like he's biting him, like on the arm.
The initial signs are puzzling, unclear.
Getting pulled out of their cars and thrown to the ground. It looks like the bus passengers are biting their victims.
Soon, however, the reality is clear and undeniable.
The crisis involving the recently dead continues. Parliament today passed a law that requires all bodies of the recently deceased to be registered and turned
Toxic
over.
Bag Productions has captured the sounds of the zombie apocalypse and brought them to your gaming table. Background ambiances, zombie attacks, and radio transmissions that set the scene for your modern zombie adventure. Download MP3s from drivethrurpg.com or toxicbag.com.
Hey there, this is Greg Nicotero, and you're listening to Aim for the Head podcast with Diana and Steve. And don't forget to always aim for the head, because body shots, they really just don't work.
Hey everybody, we are back. Always lovely to hear the lovely voice of Mr. Greg Nicotero. We're going to jump right into our feedback that we've received from our listeners. Steve, why don't you go ahead and take it away and get us started with that?
All righty. Well, our first piece of feedback does come from the international desk.
Yes.
And it is from our number one fan in Germany, Andy.
Yeah.
Hello, Andy. How are you? And this feedback is about episode 20. So this is from episode 20, and he goes,
What's been lost was
What's been lost? Yes.
Yeah.
And he goes, Hi Diana, hi Steve. So we each get our own hello. How about
so
cool
lovely?
Is
Thank
that?
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
He goes, the only thing I really wondered about in this episode is why our guys didn't try to involve Mercer. After all, Pamela arrested his sister and his girlfriend, and he put "and" all in caps. Even if they don't trust him, they could ask Yumiko or her brother to talk with him. Yumiko, instead of running after Pamela's minion, could have visited Mercer and asked him where Pamela brought her friends. He probably knows about Outpost 22. He at least has a better chance than trying to get Hornsby out of jail. Yeah, you know, they when Carol rescues Daryl from that fight he's having with the guy that's got the knife in his arm.
Yeah.
And when they're leaving there, and you know, Daryl's like, they even took dog. He even says, we need to get to Mercer, and she says, are you sure you can trust him? And then he's like, Daryl's kind of stops and thinks about maybe Mercer isn't the best choice. And that's when Carol's like, well, you know who does all this black bag stuff? That's Hornsby. So if anyone's going to know where they are, it's going to be him. And that's why they decide that. So I agree with you. I thought Mercer, and I think Andy, the point that I really agree with you is that Yumiko should have gone to Mercer.
Yes.
Because Yumiko wasn't being hunted down. Right.
Yeah. So and she could have gone to visit Mercer and had no suspicion upon her,
Right. And she could be like, what happened to my friends? Where are they? Because let's be honest, it's entirely possible that Mercer doesn't even really know.
Yeah, because look at the people that were involved. I mean, yes, the soldiers are taking them in the convoy, but it looks like there's other people there, not just, yes, of course, there's people from Alexandria and Hilltop Settlement that we don't know their names and whatever. So they could all be those people. But it's also this is a normal place that I'm sure Mercer knows about. So if they just had the soldiers moving a convoy, that wouldn't be abnormal. And the people who took all of our people were not soldiers. They were in regular street clothes. They were like black ops or whatever, or some kind of secret police. They were not working officially. So
yeah.
So and they were just brought to the soldiers and told, we need to put these guys on a convoy. They're going to Outpost 22, and these ones are going elsewhere, and these ones are going somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It seems it's very possible that Mercer doesn't even know what's going on.
Sure. Well, remember what Hornsby told him, right? When he goes, when Mercer's like, you got my soldiers killed. And Hornsby just kind of laughs and he goes, "You really think they're your soldiers?" So yeah. I mean, clearly there's. You would think there are whole, outpost installations, facilities that are set up outside of the Commonwealth that Mercer is completely in the dark on.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, so Andy continues and he says, "This scene also wasn't very convincing. First, this electronic foot shackle. I think those things work with GPS, but GPS is not working anymore." Also, the idea to run away with him was a bit simple for Daryl and Carol. They could have put on the uniforms of the two guys they took out and asked Hornsby where this alarm is to go there and deactivate it. Or they could have given him a uniform so he can sneak out during the alarm. Plenty of options. Greetings from Germany, Andy. Andy, thanks so much for writing in. It's amazing. I love it. And as far as the Hornsby escape, the GPS or the whatever the ankle thing that he had, the electronic thing, that was a little weird for me too, because I was kind of like, really, they have like electronics? But I kind of got the sense that it was keyed to like leaving the cell, because that alarm went off pretty quick.
I think too, I also heard someone say on another podcast that those are also they can be more radio signal than GPS. Like the more modern, if you think about the fact that these would have to be ankle bracelets that were produced in like 2010. Mm-hmm. And like take that technology and push it forward. That someone made a comment somewhere where they said they think it's on radio frequency, which they would be able to use, and to just trigger a simple alarm. I still don't understand why we didn't just cut it off of his ankle, because that is also possible.
Well, they I think Daryl like pulled his knife out or something, and Hornsby was like, you can't do that, so maybe cutting the cord or the part that wraps around his ankle would set it off or something. There's some sort of anti removal system. Like the only way to actually remove it is to like unlock it or something. But in any case, the whole points about the stormtrooper outfits and why didn't they take them and all that. You're right, they totally could have.
I agree with that.
I think the only thing you could say is they were clearly in a hurry because they were trying to get to their friends, right? And speed that along.
I was surprised they didn't do it later. Like, I understand, like, trying to get out of the Commonwealth and get out of the cell and all of that stuff. I don't understand why they didn't employ that thing later, especially after they killed the ones outside the tunnel. I would have taken those outfits in a hot second, because that would give you passage along any road. They're looking for plainclothed people who have taken our soldiers' Jeep. Well, if you have the Jeep with people in the outfits driving around, no one's going to look at them sideways.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
I don't know. So, yeah, you brought up a good point, Andy. I totally think they could have utilized that, and it would have added a level of believability to that breakout, for sure. For sure. Thanks for writing in, Andy. We always love hearing from you.
It's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Next up, we got an email from Amelia from the Pitney and Amelia's Bitchin' podcast. Hey, Amelia. Thanks for writing in.
Hey, Amelia.
And she put, oh, God, it's Halloween weekend. I have no time to write. I'm such an overachiever. I'm literally dressing 8 skeletons in pirate costumes and a crew skeleton as a parrot to turn my yard into a skelly pirate party. And
I think it's a crow skeleton, not a crew. Just throwing that out there. So it's a skeleton of a crow that she's turning into a parrot skeleton.
Oh, did I say crew? I meant to say
you did.
Crow.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That is, continue.
My bad. That's funny because she emailed in later because she had an autocorrect error in her first email.
Oh yeah.
So she says she's turning her yard into a skelly pirate party because I have to keep ripping myself. And then she wrote in later and she's like, oh my God, I meant to say topping myself. She's like, ripping myself? Who does that? Anyway, so she turns it into a skelly pirate party because she has to keep topping herself. I need professional help. Actually, I have a therapist, but I think I might need a whole team of them. Anywho, Walking Dead. Now I have even less time. Dang it. This episode felt a little like old school The Walking Dead, when the different communities were working together to go up against the saviors, and the audience didn't know that was going to work. So there was all that yummy tension. Only now the tension is insane because we don't even fully know what our people are up against. We just keep finding out it's worse than we thought. And we know that clock is ticking. And oh my God, Ezekiel is like, oh, really, Negan? You think you can just come over here and talk to me like we're friends? And that train dude stabbed himself in the throat. And, hey, is that Walker kid supposed to remind me of Corey Feldman in whichever Friday the 13th movie that was? I'm starting to get a little sad. It's almost over. My stomach hurts. Meanwhile, duct tape. I need duct tape. Hope you all have a great Halloween.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you, Amelia.
To answer your question, Amelia, Corey Feldman was in Friday the 13th Part 4, the final chapter, and in the opening scene of Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. So there you go.
Yeah, can always count on you to have the random trivia about the horror movie.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Well, I know we didn't really talk about it, but I did not see any ghouls in this one that were like what Nicotero talked about. So that's a good point. Maybe that one was supposed to be like Corey Feldman. I don't know. We'll have to ask him. But yeah, if he turns up at the show in Monroeville next June, which again he's been there the last couple of years because he's from that area, it's entirely possible. One of the things I will definitely ask him is what were all of the slasher.
Can you confirm all of them?
Yeah. So that we can just kind of make sure.
Yeah, I'm also curious too if we're going to get the Greg Nicotero ghoul, which he inserts himself as a ghoul every now and then.
He does, yes.
Yeah, so I mean, the finale would be a perfect place to put that.
you would think so, right? Yeah.
So keep your eyes open, people. We'll have to see if he does it, and if he does, when he does it. So yeah, thanks again for writing in, Amelia. We always look forward to your emails. They are hilarious.
They are very, very funny. So all right, so our next piece of trivia, boy, I get the international desk this week, don't I? Because we're going back across the pond to jolly old England, where our fan Bev 2 wrote in via the Facebook. Hello, Bev. How are you?
Hey, Bev.
And she says, I really like this and the last episode, but I wish that they'd made them into one episode. There just seems to be so many hanging storylines from the past and present that need tying up, that to have the search for our gang take 2 episodes seems a bit wasteful. Having said that, some of my favorite scenes took place in quieter moments between 2 characters. Gentle touches of reassurance between Carol and Daryl, conversations between Gabriel and Rosita that gave us a deeper look into their relationship, and Maggie sharing her guilt over losing hold of Herschel all served as a reminder of why I love the show so much. The action sequences are great, but they take us away from spending time with the characters we love, some of which we could be losing very soon.
I know!
Yeah, I did have that thought with the Gabriel Rosita scene where like they're kind of like you said, they're like the married but not married couple.
Yes.
You know, where he's like, what is it you always tell me when I'm stressing out about stuff? And it's like, quit your bitching and move on. You know, and, but the thought I had was like, you know what? At any moment, one of these characters could get a crossbow through the eye.
Yeah. Yes, they could. Aw, Denise.
Denise. Yeah. You know, just again, no plot armor at all. And so, you know, is this the last scene we're going to have both of them together ever? Maybe?
I don't know. It scares me. It scares me, but also it's sad because it scares me and thrills me at the same time for us to have some actual loss, you know?
Yeah.
So hoping it actually starts happening soon. Thanks so much for writing in, for Bev. We love hearing from you.
Oh, absolutely. And we are right there with you, chewing on those fingernails.
Yes. Next up, we had some feedback from our pal Karen Cohen via the Facebook.
Hey, Karen.
And she starts off and says, hello, your second favorite Cohen here. That is not true. Not true.
All I said was if you were related to Karen Cohen, it would be cooler if you were.
Yeah.
That's all.
So she says a few thoughts. She says, please make it make sense. Oh, okay. Yes, finally. Kill them and take their shit. Oh, yeah, so they took their guns and stuff like that. Yes.
Right.
Zombie Kid, A+. Agreed. Mama Carol is back. Agreed. Negan's new phrase, it fits. Snore.
Yeah.
Love it. Are they introducing a new big bad right now? TikTok.
Yeah, good question.
I'm right there with you. This show has hardly any time left, and it seems like so much more needs to happen. I know. It does feel like a lot has to happen. That's why I'm so anxious. Yep. They will probably just railroad us with it all at once. See what I did there? Applause. Well done. And she says, Happy Halloween, Karen. Happy Halloween.
Yeah, happy Halloween to you too, Karen. Yes.
Yeah, thanks for writing in. And I agree. I think that's part of the anxiety is it feels like they have a lot to cover and not a lot of time left, and it's just making me anxious.
Right. Yeah, I agree. And almost in a fear kind of way, where fear would, and totally different in mechanics, but sort of the same result in that fear would just kind of meander through the first 6 episodes where they really didn't do anything with the story. And then that 7th episode, you just like, here's all the
cram
plot.
It down your throats. Yeah.
Yeah. And we're kind of not, and again, Angela Kang's much better in laying out the plot, in a nice, consistent way. It's just, we're all kind of like, the show is ending. It's not like just a season finale or a mid-season. It's like, no, there's only 3 left and then there's no more. Oh my God, there's so much we have to know. We have to get to. And so, I'm right there with you. Although I'm wondering, the first one, please make it make sense. What do you think she means by that?
Maybe just the episode, please make it make sense, like all of the points she's making.
Yeah.
Make the episode make sense, especially since it's not moving at the pace you think it should, not covering the things she thinks it should. So,
and also of a lot of questions and not as many answers were kind of thrown at us in this one, like who was that new big bad?
Yeah,
and all that stuff. So maybe I could see that.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, but we can't help you make it make sense.
We can't. No.
We can't make you make it make sense for you.
However, if you were to contact Amelia, she apparently has a whole team of therapists that she might be able to help you make some sense.
It's possible. Okay. So what's coming up next on the podcast? Well, I don't know if you knew this, but there's only 3 more episodes left.
Only 3 more?
Oh my God. Next week's episode is episode 22, not episode 21 about Outpost 22. God, couldn't they have called it a different number? Episode 22, title of the episode is Faith. As of the recording of this podcast, there's no episode description yet, which does not surprise me. I think we're going to start seeing some of that in the next couple of weeks, obviously. There were some images. Definitely, there was a next time on Walking Dead at the end of the episode, and we get some scenes of some more conflict. It looks like, our guys are coming up against the soldiers again a little bit more. It looks like there's some conflict between a soldier, Negan, and Annie. That doesn't look good. Daryl's still sort of observing our people from afar with the binoculars. We see some scenes inside some houses in Alexandria. It's so bizarre. That's such a weird tonal shift to be back inside a house in Alexandria. And a lot of that. Also interspersed with that are a lot of what look like courtroom scenes. So it looks like we're going to see the trial of Eugene.
Yep.
Whether it finishes in that episode, who knows? But it definitely looks like that is going to be happening and coming to some kind of head in next week's episode. I do want to tell people, if you hadn't had a chance to watch Talking Dead, either the live version last night, if you DVR'd it, or if you watch it on the app later in the week like Steve does, there is a really good sneak peek for next week's episode in there. We talked about this last week, and I think moving forward, I'm not going to describe it because I don't want to give anything away. And it's a good scene. So if you want to see it, it's there. If you want to skip it and just watch the episode, I totally respect that. Sure. I don't think it gives away too much. But if you're trying to avoid the spoilers going in, then I'm going to try not to contribute to them. So yeah, so it's out there. Watch it if you want. Keep away from it if you don't. And we mentioned it earlier, but man, it's going to start getting ugly in the next few weeks. So be careful on social media about the spoilers. I did already see a couple of things on Twitter as well as on IMDb. Be careful. Just descriptions and things and people saying stuff that makes me slightly know either things that are going to happen in the next episode or the episode after. And I, again, disappointed that I know even what little I know. Did I say I had something spoiled for this episode?
Yes, you did.
Yeah. What was it that was spoiled?
You didn't say what it was. You just said that you got spoiled because the people were already tweeting about they were tweeting like yesterday on Sunday morning they were tweeting about next week's episode.
Yes, they were. But I mean, I think last week I was talking about spoilers and I said for Outpost 22 I was already spoiled about something. One of the things was we were talking about whether or not that gate kind of, you said it looked kind of like Terminus, like a very Terminus style.
You were actually quite right.
Alexandria.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was spoiled on. I said it looked like Alexandria. I actually already knew it was Alexandria.
You already knew it was. Okay, I was going to compliment you because I'm like, a good call, Diana.
That was someone else. And I think there was something else. The thing is that sometimes it's not something big. Sometimes it's something small.
Yeah.
But I want to discover all those small details myself. I don't want someone else to give them to me.
I mean, if you remember last week, I got kind of majorly spoiled, and I was going to say what it was, and you're like, no, I don't want to know, and so I didn't.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So it's I already sort of know something about next week's episode for Faith for episode 22. At least one of the directions there seem to be going in, or something they hint at. I don't know. And it's disappointing. So I think I just need to be more stringent and stay away. It's difficult because we also use Twitter to talk about getting feedback for our current episode that we're going to be talking about. So it's hard to do that and avoid it at the same time. It's a struggle on these streets, people. Let me tell you. Anyway, so there's that. Beware of the spoilers. They're out there. On Talking Dead, they did have a cute thing where I guess in the next few weeks they've been doing polls online of like top 5 this, top 5 that, and last night they talked about the top 5 romantic moments. I can't remember all 5. They did include the moment where Aaron put Eric down after he turned. And that's the thing, he never really did, because Eric walked away, didn't he? And he was a zombie down on the whatever. Anyway, they said it was.
I can't remember for sure, to be honest.
Yeah, or maybe they said the moment they had together before he turned or before he died. They included 2 different Maggie and Glenn moments. One was when they about chicka wow wow at the pharmacy. Their very first time, and then also when they found each other. That great scene that happens in the cave with
on the road to Terminus.
Yes, on the road. So that was very, very cool. That's a great one. But the number one they had was Rick and Michonne's very first kiss when they were on the couch there, which I liked. I thought I think that's a really great romantic moment because it was so unexpected. We didn't know that was happening. And we're like, oh my God, it's happening. It's happening. It's happening.
People, it's happening.
It's happening. So they talked about that, which I thought was cute. And hopefully they do stuff like that every week leading up to it. It'll be fun. There is talk that on the finale, they're going to have some kind of big episode, supersize episode, reunions, special guests, stuff like that. So keep your eyes peeled for the schedule for that. I can't remember if there is also an interview with the vampire episode that night. So take a look at your local listings and see what that will entail. But he says supersize, so I would assume it'll be something that's more than the usual hour. So we'll have to see what that entails. But so get ready for it. And so we went to see Dawn of the Dead on Friday.
Yes.
Yes, we did. And it was fun. Oh my God. It was a lot better than I was expecting it to be, because we were both kind of like, does this need to be in 3D? Does Dawn of the Dead need to be is it going to be weird? Is it going to be cheesy? We didn't know what to expect, but there were some moments, like the way they did some of the 3D effects were kind of cool.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I mean, to me, the answer is no. This movie did not need to be made in 3D. No. But, I'm sure George Romero, was either spinning in his grave or just kind of laughing at the absurdity of it. And
yes.
It was not a film that was ever shot in 3D. Like intended to be shot, shown in 3D. So there's not a lot of those things coming right towards the camera moments that is typical of most 3D movies, right?
Right.
But what I think what we both marveled at was instead of trying to create those, what they really did was just to give the movie a sense of depth.
Yes.
That every scene, stuff in the foreground looked like it was in front of stuff in the middle ground, and then stuff way in the background looked like it was way in the background, and there was actual space between all of those things. So it did kind of give you that third dimension of depth. And but you're right, there were a couple moments, because there were just by default, there were a couple of moments where things did kind of fly at the camera, and we both kind of went, when it did.
Yeah.
So it was fun. But I mean, any chance to see that movie in the theater I'm excited for. And this time it was a Regal, so you had the nice comfy chairs and the stadium seating and all of the amenities of a modern theater, where most of the time when Dawn of the Dead is shown, it's shown in more of the art house type of theater that isn't necessarily a modern theater that's got all that stuff. So it was a super fun time. We had a great time, and the one complaint that I've seen, and I think even you mentioned on it too, was that
quiet.
The sound definitely was not, they did not go in and do anything with the mix, and it was definitely, it wasn't like you couldn't hear it. It just, I think we all felt it could have been a little louder, and that would have been okay.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because you've got it in 3D, and there's a couple of moments where it's like there were things that actually did the 3D like coming right at you, and so it feels like bigger, larger than life, and then the dialogue and the sound was like very normal.
Yeah.
So it was it felt kind of out of place. But hey, 3-dimensional red shag carpet, who says no?
I know. Come on, that was the highlight of the whole movie right there.
Right. That was number one with a bullet. So
we
had a good time. It was good. It was and it was great too, because we could see online like tons of people tagging themselves that went to go see it. It was a lot of fun. Seeing, so many people across the country that went over this past weekend to see it. And I think tonight is the last night. I think there's still some, because we're recording this on actual Halloween, and I think there's still a couple of showings tonight. So hopefully they round out the weekend with some fun final showings, and I hope there's plenty of people watching it tonight.
Absolutely.
Good way to spend Halloween, that's for sure.
There you go.
Yeah. Anything else we need to talk about before we wrap it up?
No, just that Days of the Dead Chicago is in 3 weeks. If you're in the Chicago area and you want to see what these crazy horror conventions are like that we're talking about, it's a great one to go to. And tickets are at discounted prices for the next 2 weeks. So if you're interested, now is the time. daysofthedead.com, and then you want to make sure you select the Chicago convention. So check it out.
Yeah, we're going to have a blast. Going to have all kinds of good times. All right. So that's going to do it for this week, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in with us this week. We can't wait to chat with you next week about the next episode of Walking Dead. But until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And I'm Steve.
And don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because body shots just don't work. So, Diana, if people want to get in touch with us, how would they go about doing that?
There are some great ways to connect with us online and leave us your comments and feedback. So to send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. Our Twitter handle is at AFTH Podcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. The best way to keep in touch with us is to like our Facebook page. Head to facebook.com/aimfortheheadpodcast to get all of our updates in your feed.
Wait. There's some recording going on.
Oh, shh. Don't tell anyone. That's a secret.